The charcoal felt wrong between my fingers, too soft, too forgiving for what I was trying to capture. I pressed harder against the textured paper, watching the darkness spread like a bruise across the white surface. Around me, the community center's art class hummed with quiet concentration, the scratch of pencils, the whisper of erasers, Mrs. Chen's soft instructions drifting through the fluorescent-lit room. "Remember, we're focusing on facial structure tonight," she said, moving between the scattered tables. "The planes of the face, the shadows that define character." I barely heard her. My hand moved almost independently, guided by something deeper than technique or training. The face emerging on my paper wasn't from the reference photo Mrs. Chen had provided. It was from memory. From nightmares. From the moment 3 years ago that had split my life into before and after. Dark eyes, sharp jawline, a small scar cutting through the left eyebrow. The kind of face that should have been handsome, but instead radiated something colder. Something that still made my breath catch in my throat when I let myself remember. "That's hauntingly good, Mia." I flinched, my charcoal slipping and smearing across the cheekbone I'd just perfected. "Mrs. Chen stood beside my table, her weathered hands clasped, her expression a mixture of admiration and concern. "The emotion you've captured." She leaned closer, studying the drawing. "Who is this?" "No one," I said too quickly, covering the portrait with my forearm. "Just practicing from imagination. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you." Mrs. Chen's eyes held that knowing look she sometimes got, the one that said she saw more than I wanted her to. But she simply patted my shoulder and moved on to critique another student's work. I should have thrown the drawing away, should have crumpled it up and buried it in the trash can on my way out. Instead, I carefully placed it in my portfolio, sandwiched between a still life of fruit and a landscape I'd been working on for weeks. The November rain had started by the time class ended at 9. I stood under the community center's awning, watching water sheet off the edges, calculating whether I could afford a ride share or if I'd need to take the bus. Again. The bus meant 45 minutes in wet clothes, meant getting home after 10, meant less sleep before my morning shift at the diner started at 6. My phone buzzed. A text from my roommate, Priya. "Your mom called again. 3rd time today. She sounds worried." I closed my eyes, guilt twisting in my chest. I'd been avoiding my mother's calls for 2 weeks, unable to face her questions about why I'd dropped out of art school, why I'd moved from Boston to New York, why I seemed to be running from something I refused to name. Because telling her the truth meant reliving, meant explaining that her daughter had witnessed something she shouldn't have. That I'd seen a man die in an alley behind the gallery where I'd been working part-time. That the face I'd just drawn belonged to the man who'd pulled the trigger. The rain intensified, and I made my decision. Bus it was. I was halfway down the steps when a black SUV pulled up to the curb, its headlights cutting through the downpour. The back window rolled down smoothly, revealing a woman in her 40s with perfectly styled dark hair and eyes that assessed me with clinical precision. "Mia Chen?" she asked, though it wasn't really a question. My blood ran cold. No one here knew my full name. I'd registered for the class as just Mia, paid in cash, kept my head down. That was the whole point of disappearing into the city's anonymity. "I think you have the wrong person," I said, taking a step back. "Your mother's maiden name was Chen," the woman continued, undeterred. "Your father was Marcus Rivera. You were born in Boston 26 years ago. You attended the Massachusetts College of Art before dropping out 8 months ago. Should I continue?" The portfolio slipped from my numb fingers, hitting the wet concrete with a slap. Drawings spilled out, immediately soaking in the rain, including the portrait. The face stared up at me from the puddle-streaked pavement, those dark eyes now bleeding charcoal tears. The woman's gaze dropped to the drawing. Something flickered across her face, surprise, maybe, or recognition. She reached for her phone, tapped something, then looked back at me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Get in the car, Mia. I don't know you. I'm not going anywhere. You can get in willingly, or I can have my associate assist you." She nodded toward the driver, a man built like a linebacker with hands the size of dinner plates. "But either way, Mr. Salvatore wants to meet you." Salvatore. The name hit me like a physical blow. I'd spent 3 years trying to forget that name, trying to convince myself that what I'd seen that night wasn't real, that I could just disappear and live a normal life. I'd been lying to myself. I don't know any Mr. Salvatore, I managed, though my voice shook. The woman's expression softened slightly, almost pitying. You drew his brother's face from memory. That tends to get his attention. My knees went weak. Brother. The dead man in the alley had a brother, and somehow, impossibly, they knew I'd drawn his face tonight. How? I couldn't finish the question. Mr. Salvatore has eyes everywhere, Miss Rivera, especially in places where people try to hide. She held the door open wider. He's not a patient man. And the rain is getting worse. I looked at my ruined drawings, at the empty street, at the community center windows now dark behind me. Mrs. Chen had left through the back exit. The other students had scattered to their cars. I was alone with these people, with this knowledge I'd been running from, with a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. I picked up my soaked portfolio, the drawings inside now probably destroyed, and climbed into the SUV. The interior smelled like leather and something expensive cologne, maybe, or wood polish. The woman slid in beside me, and the door closed with a solid, final click. The driver pulled away from the curb without a word, windshield wipers beating a steady rhythm against the rain. Where are you taking me? I asked, proud that my voice only trembled slightly. Mr. Salvatore's office, downtown. The woman extracted a compact from her purse, checking her reflection with practiced efficiency. I'm Elena, by the way, his assistant. Am I in danger? Elena snapped the compact closed, meeting my eyes with surprising directness. That depends entirely on what you tell him. And why you drew his dead brother's face 3 years after the murder. Murder. The word hung in the air between us, heavy with implications. Because it had been murder, not self-defense, not an accident, but cold, calculated execution. I'd watched from my hiding place behind the dumpster as the man with the scarred eyebrow had emptied a gun into someone who'd been begging for his life. I didn't mean to draw it, I whispered. It just happened. Elena's expression was unreadable. Mr. Salvatore doesn't believe in accidents. The drive took 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. We wound through neighborhoods that grew progressively more expensive, from the modest buildings near the community center to the gleaming towers of downtown Manhattan. The SUV eventually pulled into an underground garage, security gates opening automatically as we descended into fluorescent-lit levels of luxury cars and reserved parking. We took a private elevator, Elena's keycard granting us access. The elevator was mirrored on all sides, and I caught sight of myself, wet hair plastered to my face, cheap jacket soaked through, mascara probably smudged. I looked like exactly what I was. A struggling artist who couldn't afford proper rain gear, who took night classes at community centers, who was so far out of her depth she might as well be drowning. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse office. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, rain streaking down glass that probably cost more per square foot than my monthly rent. The space was all dark wood and leather, expensive art on the walls, real art, the kind I'd studied in school, the kind that sold for 6 figures at auction. A massive desk dominated one end of the room, but the man behind it wasn't sitting. He stood by the windows, hands in his pockets, his back to us. Even in silhouette, he radiated authority. Expensive suit tailored perfectly to broad shoulders. Dark hair slightly longer than business appropriate. Tall enough that he'd have to be at least 6'2", maybe 6'3". She's here, Elena announced. The man turned slowly, and the world tilted sideways. He looked like the face I'd drawn, not identical. This man's features were harder, more refined, aged by perhaps 5 years, but the resemblance was unmistakable. The same dark eyes, though these held an intelligence and coldness that the dead man's had never achieved. The same strong jawline, though this one was clean-shaven and somehow more intimidating for it. The same presence that made the expensive office feel smaller. He was, objectively, the most beautiful and terrifying man I'd ever seen. Mia Rivera, he said, my name sounding foreign in his deep voice. Not American, not quite there was the faint trace of an accent I couldn't place. Italian, maybe. Thank you for joining us. I didn't have much choice, I replied, finding courage in honesty. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. No, you didn't. He moved toward his desk, gesturing to a chair in front of it. Sit, please. I sat because my legs were shaking. Elena remained standing by the elevator, her posture relaxed but alert, A bodyguard, I realized. Or something close to it. The man Mr. Salvatore, I had to assume, settled into his chair with the easy confidence of someone who'd never questioned his right to occupy space. He opened a folder on his desk, extracting a photograph that he slid across the polished surface toward me. Do you recognize this man? I forced myself to look. It was him, the man from the alley. The man I'd just drawn. Younger in this photo, maybe mid-20s, smiling at something off camera. Alive. I've seen him, I admitted, because lying seemed pointless now. Where? My mouth went dry. An alley, behind the Whitmore Gallery in Boston, 3 years ago. What were you doing in that alley? Taking out trash. I worked there part-time while I was in school. Salvatore's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. What did you see? This was it, the moment I'd been running from. The truth that could either save me or destroy me. I saw him die, I said, quietly. I saw a man with a scar through his left eyebrow shoot him. 4 times. Center mass. He was dead before he hit the ground. The silence that followed was suffocating. Salvatore's dark eyes bored into mine, searching for lies, for deception, for any sign that I was something other than what I appeared to be, a terrified witness to a murder I should have reported but didn't. Why didn't you go to the police? He asked finally. Because I was scared. Because I knew if I testified, I'd be dead too. Because I'm not stupid. I met his gaze, refusing to look away. I'm sorry about your brother, but I didn't kill him. I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. My brother, Salvatore said slowly, was not a good man. He was reckless. He made enemies. He died because he thought he was untouchable. He leaned forward slightly. What I want to know is why, after 3 years of successfully hiding, you suddenly felt compelled to draw his face from memory in a public art class. I opened my mouth to answer, but he held up a hand. And before you tell me it was an accident, let me explain something about my world, Miss Rivera. In my world, there are no accidents. There are only actions and consequences, patterns and purposes. So I'll ask again, why tonight? Why now? The truth lodged in my throat, sharp-edged and impossible to swallow. Because the nightmares had been getting worse. Because I'd stopped sleeping more than a few hours at a time. Because drawing his face was the only way to exorcise the ghost that haunted me. But I couldn't say any of that. Not to this man who looked at me like I was a puzzle he intended to solve, whether I cooperated or not. The assignment was to draw from memory. I said instead, to capture someone who left an impression. I guess he left one. Salvatore studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he stood, moving around the desk to lean against it, closer to me now. Close enough that I could smell his cologne, something woody and expensive that probably cost more than my rent. You're a terrible liar, he said, not unkindly. Your hands are shaking. Your pupils are dilated. Your breathing is shallow. You're terrified. Wouldn't you be? Yes, he admitted, surprising me. If I were you, I'd be terrified. A smart woman would have burned that drawing. Would never have drawn it in the first place. Maybe I'm not that smart. Or maybe you're tired of running. His eyes searched mine. Maybe you drew that face because some part of you wanted to be found. The observation hit too close to home, and I looked away, focusing on the rain streaming down the windows. Because he was right, wasn't he? Some self-destructive part of me had wanted this, wanted confrontation, wanted resolution, wanted to stop living in the shadows of my own fear. I saw the drawing. Salvatore continued. Elena showed me the photo she took. You captured something in his expression that even I had forgotten. Vulnerability he kept hidden. You saw him die, yes, but you saw him as a person. He paused. That takes talent. And empathy. I looked back at him, confused by the turn in conversation. What do you want from me? Information. About the man who killed my brother. You said he had a scar through his left eyebrow. What else do you remember? Everything. I remembered everything. He was tall, 6 feet maybe, dark hair, gray at the temples. Expensive suit, but loosened tie, like he'd been working all day. He had an accent, Eastern European, maybe Russian. And his hands, I closed my eyes, seeing it again. His hands didn't shake, not once, like he'd done it before. When I opened my eyes, Salvatore was watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. Anything else? He had a ring, gold, with a red stone. He was wearing it on his right hand. I swallowed hard. And after he shot your brother, he made a phone call. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard him say, "It's done." And then he said a name. Victor. Salvatore's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Victor Kozlov. You know him? Everyone in my world knows Victor Kozlov. He pushed off the desk, returning to the windows, his reflection dark against the glittering city beyond. He's a problem I've been trying to solve for 3 years. A problem you just helped me with considerably. Dread pooled in my stomach. I don't want to be involved in whatever you're planning. He turned back to me, and there was something almost gentle in his expression. Almost. You've been involved since the moment you witnessed my brother's murder, Miss Rivera. The only question is whether you help me willingly or whether I make your cooperation less pleasant. That sounds like a threat. It's a reality. He moved back to his desk, extracting something from a drawer, a checkbook. I'm prepared to compensate you generously for your testimony. And for your safety, which I will personally guarantee. Testimony? You mean in court? A harsh laugh escaped him. I don't solve problems in court, Miss Rivera. I solve them my way. But I need you to identify Victor Kozlov with certainty, to confirm that he's the man you saw that night. Understanding crashed over me like cold water. He wasn't talking about justice. He was talking about revenge. About murder dressed up as retribution. I can't do that, I said, standing on shaky legs. I can't help you kill someone. Even someone who killed my brother? His voice was soft, dangerous. Even someone who would kill you without hesitation if he knew you existed? The question hung in the air between us, because he was right, wasn't he? Victor Kozlov, if that was really his name, wouldn't hesitate. I was a witness to a murder he thought he'd gotten away with. I was a loose end. I was already dead. I just didn't know it yet. How do I know you won't kill me too? I whispered. After I give you what you want? Salvatore closed the distance between us in 2 strides, so fast I didn't have time to back away. He stopped inches from me, close enough that I could see flecks of amber in his dark eyes, could feel the heat radiating from his body. Because, despite what you think you know about me, about my world, I don't kill innocent people. His voice was low, intense. My brother died because of choices he made. You're here because of choices you didn't make. There's a difference. Then let me go. I'll disappear. I'm good at it. You were good at it? He corrected. Until tonight. Until you drew his face, and my people found you within an hour. If I found you that quickly, so can Kozlov. And when he does, he won't offer you money or protection. He'll offer you a bullet. The truth of it settled over me like a shroud. I'd been living on borrowed time, thinking I was safe, thinking I'd successfully vanished into the city's anonymity, but I'd been visible all along, just waiting for the right person or the wrong one to look closely enough. What do you want me to do? I asked, hating the defeat in my voice. Salvatore's expression softened fractionally. First, you're going to move out of whatever rat-infested apartment you're currently living in. Elena will arrange a secure location. Second, you're going to work with my security team to create a detailed description and sketch of Victor Kozlov better than anything you did in your art class. Third, when the time comes, you're going to confirm his identity in person. In person? My voice cracked. You want me to see him face to face? From a safe distance, with protection. But yes, I need to be certain before I act. His hand came up, and I tensed, but he only brushed a strand of wet hair back from my face, the gesture surprisingly gentle. You'll be safe, Mia. I promise you that. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. Because the alternative going back to my life, pretending this hadn't happened, waiting for Victor Kozlov to find me was unbearable. What if I say no? Then I'll have Elena drive you home, and you'll spend the rest of your very short life looking over your shoulder. His hand dropped. But we both know you're not going to say no, because you're tired of running. And because some part of you, whether you admit it or not, wants justice for what you saw that night. He was right. I hated that he was right. Okay, I whispered. I'll help you. The smile that crossed Salvatore's face was brief but genuine. Smart girl. He returned to his desk, scribbling something on a business card and handing it to me. This is my private number. If you need anything at all, you call me directly. Not Elena. Not anyone else. Me. Understand? I took the card, its edges sharp against my trembling fingers. Just a name, Alessandro Salvatore, and a phone number. No title, no company name. Nothing to indicate that the man who owned it could have me killed with a phone call. Elena will take you to the apartment. We've prepared. Alessandro continued, his tone now purely businesslike. It's furnished, secure, and significantly better than wherever you're currently living. You'll find clothes in your size, toiletries, everything you need. Tomorrow morning, a car will bring you here at 9. We'll begin working on the identification. What about my things? My roommate? We'll collect anything essential tonight. As for your roommate, you'll tell her you got a job opportunity that required immediate relocation. She'll believe you because you'll make her believe you. His eyes held mine. This is important, Mia. No one can know where you really are or why. Not your roommate, not your mother, not anyone. Your life depends on your ability to disappear completely. I've been disappearing for 3 years. I'm good at it. Yes, he said softly. You are. But this time, you'll be disappearing into my protection. That's the difference. The apartment Elena took me to was in a building so expensive I'd never even considered walking past it before. Doorman, marble lobby, private elevator that required a keycard to operate. By the time we reached the 30th floor, I'd stopped trying to calculate what this was costing and started accepting that I'd stepped into a world where money wasn't a concern. The apartment itself was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine, a kitchen with appliances I didn't know how to use. One bedroom with a bed so large and comfortable-looking I almost cried. After months of sleeping on a lumpy futon in a 6th-floor walk-up, I shared with 2 other people. This felt like a fever dream. The closet is stocked, Elena informed me, opening a door to reveal more clothes than I'd owned in my entire life. Casual wear, professional attire, everything in your size. Mr. Salvatore had his personal shopper handle it this evening. This evening? But he only found me a few hours ago. Elena's smile was thin. Mr. Salvatore doesn't waste time. Once he decides something, it happens. She moved to the kitchen, opening the refrigerator to show me it was fully stocked. There's food, wine, coffee. The building has 24-hour security. This floor has only 2 apartments, and the other is vacant. No one will bother you here. This is too much, I said, feeling overwhelmed. I don't need all this. You need to be safe. This makes you safe. Elena pulled out her phone, tapping something. I've sent a car to collect your essentials from your current apartment. Text me a list of anything specific you need, and it will be here within the hour. She handed me a phone new, expensive, with only 3 numbers programmed in. Alessandro's, Elena's, and something labeled Emergency Security that connects directly to our response team. Elena explained. If you're in danger, if you see anything suspicious, you press that button. Help will arrive in under 3 minutes. 3 minutes isn't fast enough if someone wants me dead, which is why you also have this. She opened a drawer in the kitchen, revealing a small handgun. It's loaded. Safety is here. Point and pull. It's that simple. I stared at the weapon, my stomach churning. I've never shot a gun in my life. Then pray you never have to start. Elena closed the drawer with a soft click. Get some sleep, Mia. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. She left, and I was alone in an apartment that cost more per month than I earned in a year, holding a phone that connected me to a man who'd promised to keep me safe while asking me to help him commit murder. I should have felt trapped, terrified. Instead, standing by those enormous windows, watching the rain finally slow to a drizzle, I felt something unexpected. Relief. For 3 years, I'd been running from a ghost. Now, finally, I was going to face it. I just hoped I'd survive the confrontation. I didn't sleep. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the alley, heard the gunshots, watched a man crumple to the ground while his killer walked away like he'd done nothing more significant than check his watch. And now, overlaying those memories, Alessandro Salvatore's face so similar to his brother's but somehow entirely different. Harder, more dangerous, more alive. At 5 a.m, I gave up on sleep entirely. I showered in the bathroom's rain shower head that felt like standing under a warm waterfall, then stood in front of the closet Elena had shown me, overwhelmed by choices. Everything was expensive designer labels I recognized from magazine spreads. I finally settled on dark jeans that fit like they'd been tailored for me and a soft cashmere sweater in deep gray. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Clean, rested, despite the sleepless night. Dressed like I belonged in this world of marble lobbies and private elevators. I looked like a lie. The car arrived at 8:30, a sleek, black sedan with a driver who introduced himself as Marcus and said nothing else during the entire drive downtown. I clutched the new phone Elena had given me, Alessandro's business card tucked in my pocket like a talisman. Or a threat. I wasn't sure which. The penthouse office looked different in daylight. Less intimidating. Maybe. Or perhaps I was just too exhausted to be properly terrified anymore. Alessandro stood by those massive windows again, on the phone, speaking rapid Italian to someone who clearly didn't like what they were hearing. He gestured sharply with one hand, his tone cutting, then ended the call and turned to me. "You look better," he said, his eyes sweeping over me in quick assessment. "Did you sleep?" "No. Honest. Good." He moved to his desk, gesturing to the same chair I'd occupied last night. "We'll work on Kozlov's identification first. I have a forensic artist coming in an hour. She's the best, works with the FBI occasionally. Though she's technically freelance. Whatever you remember, she can capture it." I sat, my hands folded in my lap to hide their trembling. "And then what?" "Then we compare her sketch to our database of known associates of the Kozlov organization. If we get a match, we move forward. If not, we wait for another opportunity." "What kind of opportunity?" Alessandro's expression was unreadable. "The kind where you see him in person and can confirm it's the right man." Dread coiled in my stomach. "You said from a safe distance." "I did. And I meant it." He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "You're scared. That's smart. Fear keeps you alert. But I need you to trust me, Mia." "Can you do that?" "Trust him. Trust a man I'd met 12 hours ago. A man who operated in a world of violence and retribution. A man whose brother I'd watched die." "I don't have much choice, do I?" "No," he admitted. "You don't. But that doesn't make the trust less important." Before I could respond, the elevator chimed. Elena emerged with a woman in her 50s carrying a large leather portfolio. She had short silver hair, sharp eyes behind frameless glasses, and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen too much to be shocked by anything. "This is Sarah Chen," Alessandro introduced. "No relation to you, despite the name. She's going to help us capture Kozlov's face." Sarah sat up at a side table near the windows, extracting sketch pads, pencils, and what looked like a tablet with some kind of facial recognition software. She gestured for me to join her, and I moved on autopilot, settling into the chair across from her. "I understand you witnessed a traumatic event 3 years ago," Sarah said, her voice gentle but clinical. "I need you to walk me through that night, focusing specifically on the man you saw. We'll start broad, general build, height, age, then narrow down to specific features. Take your time. There's no rush. But there was a rush, wasn't there? Every moment I stayed visible. Every moment, Victor. Kozlov remained unaware of my existence. Was borrowed time. For the next 2 hours, I described everything I remembered." Sarah's pencil moved across the paper with confident strokes, pausing occasionally for me to correct a detail, the nose slightly more prominent, the eyes set closer together, the scar through the eyebrow more pronounced. Alessandro watched from his desk, silent but present, his attention never wavering. When Sarah finally turned the sketchpad around, I felt the blood drain from my face. There he was, Victor Kozlov, the man who haunted my nightmares, rendered in charcoal and graphite, his dead eyes staring back at me with the same cold calculation I remembered from that night. "That's him," I whispered. "That's exactly him." Alessandro moved to stand behind Sarah's chair, studying the sketch with an intensity that made the air feel thinner. "Victor Kozlov," he confirmed quietly. "One of the Bratva's top enforcers, disappeared from our radar about 2 years ago. We thought he might be dead." "Bratva?" I asked. "Russian Mafia," Alessandro translated. "Kozlov worked for the Volkov organization. They've been trying to move into our territory for years. My brother's murder was part of that effort, an attempt to weaken our family, to create chaos." His jaw tightened. "It worked. For a while." Sarah scanned the sketch into her tablet, manipulating it with quick, practiced gestures. "I'll run this through facial recognition databases. If he's been photographed anywhere in the last 3 years, we'll find him." "Thank you, Sarah," Alessandro said, dismissing her with a nod. She packed up her materials efficiently and disappeared into the elevator, leaving me alone with him again. He moved to the bar cart in the corner, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid, whiskey. You look like you need it. I took the glass he offered, the crystal heavy in my hand. It's not even noon. It's late enough. He clinked his glass against mine, then took a slow sip, his eyes never leaving my face. You did well. That couldn't have been easy. None of this is easy. I sipped the whiskey, felt it burn down my throat, welcomed the warmth that spread through my chest. What happens if you find him? If the facial recognition matches? Then we proceed to the next phase: surveillance, confirmation, and eventually, justice. You mean murder? Alessandro's expression hardened. I mean balancing the scales. Kozlov killed my brother in cold blood. He would have killed you too if he'd known you existed. Men like him don't respond to courts or laws or civilized negotiation. They respond to strength. And you're strong enough? Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. I'm strong enough? We stood there in silence, the city sprawling below us, 2 people bound together by violence and necessity. I should have been terrified of him. Maybe I was, but there was something else beneath the fear, a grudging respect for his directness, for the way he didn't pretend to be anything other than what he was. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. Tell me about your brother, I said suddenly. Not how he died, who he was. Alessandro's surprise was evident, though he masked it quickly. He returned to his desk, settling into his chair with the glass cradled in his hands. Why do you want to know? Because I drew his face from memory. Because I see him when I close my eyes. Because maybe understanding who he was will help me understand why I can't stop thinking about that night. He was silent for a long moment, swirling the whiskey in his glass. Then he spoke, his voice quieter than I'd heard it. His name was Marco. He was 3 years younger than me. Reckless, ambitious, everything I wasn't. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. My father used to say Marco had fire in his blood, that he'd either burn bright or burn out. He burned out. He did. Alessandro's eyes grew distant. He wanted to prove himself. To show our father, to show me that he was ready for more responsibility. So he made deals without permission, took risks without backup. And one of those risks was meeting with Viktor Kozlov alone in that alley. Understanding clicked into place. It wasn't random. Marco knew Kozlov was going to be there. Yes. Marco thought he could negotiate territory rights, could forge an alliance between our family and the Bratva. He was naive, stupid, and it got him killed. Alessandro's voice hardened. But he was still my brother, and in my world, blood demands blood. I thought about my own family, my mother, struggling to make ends meet after my father died when I was 12. How I'd tried to protect her by disappearing after the murder, by not dragging her into danger. How I called her every week from burner phones and lied about being happy, being successful, being anything other than terrified. I understand, I said quietly, about protecting family, about doing whatever it takes. Alessandro's eyes found mine, and something in them softened. Yes, I think you do. His phone buzzed, breaking the moment. He checked it, frowned, then looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Sarah found something. Kozlov was photographed 6 months ago at a charity gala in Atlantic City. He's using the name Viktor Kozak now, running a high-end security consulting firm. It's a front, obviously, but a good one. My heart rate accelerated. So you know where he is. We know where he was 6 months ago. We're tracking current whereabouts now. He set down his phone. Elena is arranging for you to stay at my family's estate in Connecticut for the next few days. It's more secure than the apartment, and I'll be there to oversee your safety personally. Your family's estate? The words came out higher than I intended. As in, where you live? As in, where you'll be safest. The property has 24-hour security, trained guards, surveillance that would make the NSA jealous. If Kozlov somehow discovers your existence and comes looking, he won't get within a mile of you. But your family... My mother passed away 5 years ago. My father is semi-retired and spends most of his time in Italy. The estate is effectively mine now. His tone left no room for argument. You'll have your own wing. Privacy. Everything you need. This is moving very fast. Because it has to. He stood, moving around the desk to stand in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Kozlov is a professional, Mia. If he suspects for even a moment that there was a witness to Marco's murder, he'll eliminate that threat. You. The only way to keep you safe is to control your environment completely. Control. I stood too, refusing to be intimidated by his proximity. That's what this is about, isn't it? Control. Yes, he admitted without hesitation. Because control is what keeps people alive in my world. Chaos gets people killed. And what about what I want? Do I get any say in this? Alessandro's expression was unreadable. What do you want, Mia? The question hung between us. What did I want? To go back to my old life? To pretend none of this had happened? To keep running forever? Or did I want what he was offering: protection, purpose, a chance to finally face the nightmare that had defined the last 3 years of my life? I want to stop being afraid, I said finally, honestly. I want to sleep without seeing his face. I want to live without looking over my shoulder. Then come to Connecticut. Help me find Kozlov. And when this is over, you'll have your life back. Clean, safe, free. It sounded like a promise. It felt like a deal with the devil. Okay, I whispered. I'll go. The estate was exactly what I'd imagined and nothing like I'd expected. We drove for 2 hours, north of the city, leaving behind skyscrapers and traffic for winding roads through forests just beginning to show their autumn colors. The property was hidden behind 12-foot stone walls and gates that opened automatically as our convoy approached 3 SUVs, one carrying Alessandro and me, the others filled with security personnel whose names I didn't know and faces I tried not to remember. The main house was massive, not a mansion in the tacky, ostentatious sense, but something older, grander. Stone and ivy, tall windows reflecting the late afternoon sun, a circular driveway with a fountain at its center. It looked like something from a period drama, all old money and established power. "This is where you grew up?" I asked as Marcus opened my door. Until I was 18. Alessandro emerged from the other side, his expression neutral as he surveyed the property. My grandfather built it in the 20s. Prohibition money, originally, though we've since diversified. Diversified into what? I didn't ask. I was learning that some questions were better left unspoken. Inside was just as impressive: marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that belonged in museums. Staff materialized to take our bags, their efficiency suggesting long practice at making invisible entrances and exits. Alessandro guided me through corridors and up a wide staircase to the second floor, down a hallway lined with portraits of severe-looking men and women who I assumed were his ancestors. "Your wing," he said, opening double doors to reveal a suite of rooms that made the expensive apartment seem modest by comparison. Sitting room, bedroom with a fireplace, bathroom with a soaking tub, even a small office area with a desk positioned by windows overlooking manicured gardens. "You'll be comfortable here." Comfortable seemed like an understatement. "The kitchen is staffed 24 hours. Alessandro continued. "Just call down if you need anything. My rooms are in the East Wing if there's an emergency, but security will respond faster." He pulled out his phone, checking something. "I have a conference call in 20 minutes. Unpack, rest, explore if you want. Dinner is at 7. I'll have someone come get you." Then he was gone, leaving me alone in luxury that felt more like a gilded cage than a sanctuary. I unpacked the few things I'd brought from my apartment, mostly clothes that now looked shabby compared to what Elena had provided. The closet in this room was already stocked too, I discovered. More designer labels, more perfect fits. Alessandro's people were nothing if not thorough. I was standing by the window, watching the sun sink toward the horizon, when a soft knock interrupted my thoughts. "Come in," I called, expecting staff. Instead, an elderly woman entered, her white hair pulled into an elegant bun, her posture ramrod straight despite what must have been at least 70 years of age. She wore a simple black dress and pearls, her face lined with age but still beautiful, her dark eyes, Alessandro's eyes sharp and assessing. "So you're the girl my grandson is hiding," she said, in accented English, Italian underneath. "The witness," I straightened instinctively. I thought Alessandro's family was in Italy. Most of them are. "I prefer Connecticut." She moved farther into the room with the confidence of someone who owned everything she surveyed. "I am Nonna Salvatore. You may call me Nonna." "Everyone does," Mia Rivera, I managed, though she clearly already knew who I was. Yes. The artist who drew Marco's face from memory. Nana's expression softened slightly. Alessandro showed me the portrait. You captured my grandson well. The vulnerability he tried so hard to hide. I'm sorry for your loss. Are you? She moved to sit in one of the armchairs by the fireplace, gesturing for me to take the other. Most people who say that don't mean it. They're simply uncomfortable with grief. I sat slowly, uncertain of this woman's intentions. I mean it. I saw him die. I think about it every day. I wish I could have stopped it. Nana studied me for a long moment, her gaze penetrating. You would have died too. Marco made his choices. You made yours. You survived. That's nothing to apologize for. Your grandson doesn't see it that way. Alessandro wants revenge. Alessandro wants justice, she corrected. There's a difference, though it's often subtle in our world. She leaned back slightly, her hands folded in her lap. Tell me, Mia Rivera, what do you want? It was the second time today someone had asked me that question, and I still didn't have a good answer. I want to stop running, I said finally. I want my life back. And you think helping Alessandro kill Viktor Kozlov will give you that? The bluntness of it, the casual way she said, kill, should have shocked me. Instead, I found it almost refreshing. No pretense, no euphemisms. Just truth. I think it's the only way Kozlov stops, being a threat to me. Nana nodded slowly, approval in her eyes. You're smarter than you look. Prettier too, which will cause problems of its own. She stood with surprising grace. A word of advice, Kara. My grandson is a good man, despite what you may think. He protects what's his. But be careful not to become his without understanding what that means. I'm not his anything, I protested. Not yet. Nana moved toward the door, pausing at the threshold. But Alessandro doesn't bring women to this house, Mia. He doesn't give them his mother's clothes or let them sleep under his family's roof. That he's done so with you says more than he realizes. She smiled, a knowing expression. Dinner is at 7. Dress nicely. He'll appreciate it. Then she was gone, leaving me with more questions than answers and a growing certainty that I'd stepped into something far more complicated than a simple witness protection arrangement. I almost didn't go to dinner. The idea of sitting across from Alessandro, playing dress-up in his dead mother's clothes, pretending this was normal, it felt like too much. But the alternative was hiding in my room like a coward, and I'd been hiding for 3 years already. So at 6:55, wearing a simple black dress that Elena's mysterious shopper had somehow gotten exactly right, I followed a staff member down to the dining room. It was smaller than I expected, intimate, really, with a table set for 4. Alessandro stood by the windows, drink in hand, talking quietly with 2 men I didn't recognize. He turned as I entered, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or appreciation. He said something to the men, dismissing them, then crossed to me. You look beautiful, he said simply. The compliment caught me off guard. Your grandmother said to dress nicely. A smile touched his lips. You met Nana. I'm sorry. She can be intense. She warned me about you. Smart woman. He gestured to the table. It's just us tonight. I thought you might prefer that to a crowd. Won't your grandmother join us? Nana eats at 5:30 sharp and is in bed by 8. She's 92 and set in her ways. He pulled out a chair for me, a surprisingly old-fashioned gesture. Besides, she was just checking you out, making sure you were worthy of the Salvatore hospitality. And? I sat, hyper-aware of his proximity as he pushed the chair in. Did I pass inspection? She didn't have you thrown off the property, so I'd say yes. He moved to his own seat across from me as staff materialized with the first course, a delicate soup that smelled heavenly. She likes you. That's rare. She also warned me not to become yours without understanding what that means. Alessandro paused, his spoon halfway to his mouth. Nana has a dramatic streak. Does she? Or is she right? He set down the spoon, his dark eyes meeting mine. What do you think she meant? I think she meant that you're used to owning things, controlling things, and that I should be careful not to become one more possession. Is that how you see yourself? As a possession? I see myself as someone who doesn't have a lot of choices right now. I took a sip of the soup, buying time. You've given me safety, protection, expensive clothes and a room in your family home. But all of it comes with strings, doesn't it? Expectations. The expectation that you'll help me find Kozlov, Alessandro said quietly. That's all, nothing more. Really? Because it feels like more. It feels like you're trying to, I struggled for the right word, absorb me into your world. Your life. He was silent for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he leaned back in his chair, studying me. Would that be so terrible? Being part of my world? Yes, I said honestly, because your world is built on violence, on blood and revenge and people dying in alleys. I'm an artist, Alessandro. I'm supposed to create beauty, not... I gestured helplessly. This, he repeated. You mean safety? Resources? The ability to sleep at night without fear? I mean complicity, in whatever you're planning to do to Kozlov. You think helping me makes you complicit, doesn't it? Alessandro leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his eyes intense. Let me tell you about Viktor Kozlov. He's killed 17 people that we know of. 17? Men, women, he doesn't discriminate. He killed my brother not because Marco was a threat, but because the Bratva wanted to send a message. And when he's done with me, when he's destroyed my family's organization, he'll move on to the next target, the next victim. He paused, letting that sink in. You stopping him isn't violence, Mia. It's preventing violence. It's making sure he can't hurt anyone else. That's rationalizing murder. That's accepting reality. His voice softened. I understand your moral conflict. I do. But the world isn't as simple as right and wrong. Sometimes it's survival and death. And I'm choosing survival. For yourself or for me? Both. The staff cleared the soup course, bringing something more substantial. Chicken, vegetables, wine. We ate in silence for a while, the tension between us palpable but not quite hostile, more like recognition. We were two people from different worlds, forced together by circumstance, trying to navigate impossible choices. Tell me about your art, Alessandro said eventually, clearly changing the subject. What do you paint? The question surprised me. Mostly landscapes, places I've been or want to go. Sometimes portraits, though not usually from memory. Except my brother. Except your brother, I agreed quietly. That was different, because it haunted you. Yes, he nodded, understanding in his eyes. I have something that haunts me too. Do you want to know what it is? I wasn't sure I did, but I nodded anyway. The moment I got the call that Marco was dead, Alessandro said, his voice low. I was in a meeting. My phone rang. I almost didn't answer it. If I hadn't, would those extra few minutes have changed anything? Could I have saved him? You couldn't have, I said firmly. I was there, remember? He died instantly. There was nothing anyone could have done. Logically, I know that. But logic doesn't stop the guilt. He looked at me across the table. Just like logic doesn't stop you from feeling responsible for not reporting what you saw. He'd seen right through me. Of course he had. I should have gone to the police, I whispered. Maybe if I had, you'd be dead, Alessandro cut in. Kozlov has people everywhere, including in law enforcement. You would have filed a report, and within 24 hours he would have known about it, and then you would have been next. You can't know that. I can. Because I know how men like Kozlov operate. I know because I operate in the same world, even if I play by slightly different rules. The admission hung between us. He wasn't pretending to be something he wasn't, a businessman, a philanthropist, a legitimate citizen. He was showing me exactly who he was. And somehow, that honesty was more compelling than any lie would have been. I don't know if I can do this, I said quietly. Help you find him, confirm his identity, be part of whatever happens next. Alessandro reached across the table, his hand covering mine. His touch was warm, firm, grounding. You can. Because you're stronger than you think. And because you won't be alone. I'll be with you every step of the way. Why? The question burst out before I could stop it. Why do you care so much? I'm nobody, just a witness who happened to draw the wrong face at the wrong time. His hand tightened on mine. You're not nobody, Mia. You're brave. You survived something traumatic and built a new life from nothing. You have talent, real talent, and you use it to see people as they really are, not as they pretend to be. You drew Marco with compassion even, though you watched him die. That takes extraordinary empathy. He paused, his dark eyes searching mine. And maybe I care because I'm tired of being surrounded by people who only see me as Don Salvatore, the boss, the heir. You see me as Alessandro, just a man who lost his brother and wants justice. That's rare. And valuable. My breath caught. This dangerous man, this criminal who operated in shadows and violence, wanted to be seen as human, as someone with emotions beyond rage and retribution. I see you, I whispered. I'm terrified of you, but I see you. A smile touched his lips, genuine, warm, transforming his face into something almost beautiful. Good. Terror means you're paying attention. Despite everything, I laughed. A small, slightly hysterical sound, but real. And in that moment, sitting across from Alessandro Salvatore in his family's mansion, his hand warm on mine, I realized something terrifying. I was starting to trust him. Not because I wanted to. Not because it was smart. But because something in him recognized something in me, two people marked by violence, trying to navigate impossible circumstances, finding unexpected connection in the darkness. The rest of dinner passed with easier conversation. He told me about growing up on the estate, about summers in Italy with his mother's family, about his father's impossible expectations. I told him about art school, about my mother's quiet strength, about the father I'd lost too young. We talked around the violence, around the danger, creating a small space of normalcy in a situation that was anything but. By the time dessert arrived, tiramisu that melted on my tongue, I'd almost forgotten why I was here. Almost forgotten that this beautiful house with its kind staff and elegant rooms was also a fortress. A place where dangerous men made dangerous plans. I have something to show you, Alessandro said as we finished coffee. If you're not too tired. What is it? A surprise. Come. He led me. Through the house, down corridors I hadn't seen, to a wing that felt older, less renovated. He unlocked a heavy wooden door with an actual key, not a key card or fingerprint scanner, but an old-fashioned brass key that looked like it belonged in a Gothic novel. Inside was an art studio. I stopped in the doorway, my breath catching. Natural light flooded in through tall windows, even at this hour, supplemented by professional lighting hanging from exposed beams. Easels stood at various angles, canvases in different stages of completion. Shelves lined one wall, stocked with paints, brushes, supplies. A potter's wheel sat in one corner, a drafting table in another. My mother's studio, Alessandro said quietly. She was a painter, quite good actually, though she only sold a few pieces. Creating was enough for her. I moved into the space like stepping into a cathedral. Everything was immaculate but clearly unused. Dust covered some surfaces. The paint tubes were old, probably dried, out. But the space itself, the bones of it, was perfect. Why are you showing me this? Because Nana was right. I don't bring people here. To this house. To this room. He moved to stand beside me, looking at a half-finished landscape on the nearest easel, a Tuscan hillside rendered in warm ochres and deep greens. But I thought you might like it. Might find it useful while you're here. Useful for what? For creating instead of just remembering. His voice was soft. You've spent 3 years haunted by something you saw. Maybe it's time to create something new. Something that's yours. The gesture was so unexpected, so thoughtful, that I felt tears prick my eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll use it. Say you'll paint something beautiful while you're here. Something that has nothing to do with violence or death or Viktor Kozlov. He turned to face me fully. Say you'll let this place be a sanctuary, not a prison. I looked at him, this complicated, dangerous, surprisingly tender man, and made a decision. I'll use it. I promised. Thank you, Alessandro. Alex, he said. My friends call me Alex. Are we friends? His smile was slight but genuine. We're something, Mia. I'm not sure what yet. But we're something. He left me there, alone with his mother's art supplies and the ghosts of creation past. And I knew with absolute certainty that Nana had been right. I was becoming his. Whether I wanted to or not. The question was, what would that cost me in the end? The days at the estate developed a rhythm I hadn't expected. Mornings, I woke to sunlight streaming through windows overlooking gardens that seemed to stretch forever. Breakfast appeared on a tray outside my door, fresh fruit, pastries, Italian coffee strong enough to wake the dead. I'd eat, shower, then make my way to the studio where Alessandro's mother had once created beauty in a world defined by violence. I painted landscapes, Tuscan hillsides I'd never seen, but somehow knew from ancestral memory. Coastal scenes from my childhood in Massachusetts. Abstract pieces, when the emotions became too complex for representation. And slowly, stroke by stroke, I began to exorcise the ghosts that had haunted me. Alessandro worked from the estate's study, conducting business via phone calls and video conferences. Sometimes I'd see him through open doors, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, speaking rapid Italian with that edge of command that suggested people didn't question his decisions twice. Other times, he'd appear in the studio doorway, watching me paint with an intensity that made my hands shake. "You don't have to watch," I said one afternoon, not turning from the canvas. "I know," but he didn't leave. "You have your father's bone structure. Stronger than you think." I paused mid-stroke. "You had me investigated that thoroughly?" "I had you investigated completely." No apology in his voice. "It's what kept you alive before you knew you needed protecting. And the watching? What's that?" "Appreciation." He moved closer, stopping just behind my right shoulder, close enough that I could feel his presence like heat. "You create the way some people breathe. Naturally, necessarily. My mother says it's an expensive habit. That I should have studied something practical. Your mother worries because she loves you. But she's wrong." His hand came up, not touching me, but pointing to a section of the painting where I'd captured light hitting water. "That's not a habit. That's a gift." I set down my brush, turning to face him. "Why are you being kind to me? Is that what you think this is? Kindness, isn't it?" Alessandro's dark eyes held mine. "Kindness is something you do for strangers. What I feel about you is considerably more complicated." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Alex." His phone buzzed. He checked it, and whatever he saw made his expression shift. Everything soft, vanishing, replaced by the hardness I'd first seen in his penthouse office. "Sarah found him. Kozlov. He's in Atlantic City, running that security consulting firm from a building near the boardwalk." The painting, the moment, the complicated feelings between us, all of it evaporated. Reality crashed back. "When do we leave?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Tomorrow. We'll drive down, do reconnaissance, confirm it's him. If it is..." He stopped himself. "When it is, we move to the final phase, which is something you don't need details about." He reached out, tucking a paint-smudged strand of hair behind my ear, the gesture achingly gentle. "Your part is almost done, Mia. Confirm the identity. Then you're free." Free. The word should have filled me with relief. Instead, all I felt was a strange, hollow dread. That night, I couldn't paint and couldn't sleep. I stood on my room's balcony, wrapped in a cashmere throw, watching the estate's grounds bathed in moonlight. Security lights dotted the perimeter, reminders that this beautiful place was also a fortress. Couldn't sleep either. I turned to find Nana emerging from the shadows of the terrace below, moving with surprising stealth for someone her age. She gestured to the stone stairs. "Come down, Kara. Keep an old woman company." I descended carefully, the throw trailing behind me like a cape. Nana sat on a wrought iron bench positioned to overlook the gardens, a thick shawl around her shoulders, her white hair gleaming in the moonlight. "You're leaving tomorrow," she said as I settled beside her. Not a question. "How did you know?" "I always know when my grandson is preparing for violence. The house changes, the staff becomes nervous, and he stops sleeping." She looked at me, her dark eyes sharp despite her age. "You care for him?" "I barely know him." "That's not what I asked." I pulled the throw tighter around myself. "It doesn't matter what I feel. After tomorrow, I'll give him what he needs and disappear back into my life." "Will you?" Nonna's voice was skeptical. "You think Alessandro will simply let you go? After he's seen how you paint? How you see the world? How you see him? He promised me my freedom. He promised you safety. Freedom is something else entirely." She reached over, patting my hand with her weathered one. "My husband was like Alessandro. Strong, protective, dangerous when he needed to be. I knew what he was when I married him. I chose that life with open eyes. I'm not marrying Alessandro." "Not yet." That knowing smile again. "But you will. Because you're already halfway in love with him, even if you won't admit it. And he's completely in love with you, though he'd never say it aloud." My breath caught. "That's not he can't be, can't he?" "Mia." My grandson doesn't bring women to this house. He doesn't share his mother's studio. He doesn't watch someone paint with the expression I've seen on his face when he looks at you. She squeezed my hand. He's falling. The question is whether you'll catch him or let him crash. I don't belong in his world, Nana. Perhaps not. Or perhaps you're exactly what his world needs. Someone who creates instead of destroys. Someone who sees beauty instead of just survival. She stood, pulling her shawl tighter. Tomorrow, you'll face the man who gave you nightmares. Alessandro will face his brother's killer. Whatever happens after, remember this. Love in our world is rare, precious. If you find it, you hold on with both hands and don't let go. She left me there, alone with the night and thoughts I couldn't untangle. Was Nana right? Had I fallen for Alessandro, this dangerous, complicated man who'd pulled me out of hiding and into his orbit? And more terrifyingly, had he fallen for me? I went back inside, pausing at the door to his wing. Light showed under his study door. I could knock, could tell him I was scared, could ask him to hold me until the fear subsided. Instead, I went to my room, climbed into bed, and stared at the ceiling until dawn painted the sky gray. We left at 8 in the morning, 2 SUVs, Alessandro and me in the first, with Marcus driving, 4 security personnel in the second. Alessandro was quiet during the drive, his attention focused on his phone and the tablet displaying what looked like building schematics and surveillance photos. "This is the building," he said, showing me a photo of a nondescript office complex near the Atlantic City boardwalk. 3rd floor. Kozlov's firm occupies the entire level. We've been monitoring it for the past 12 hours. He arrived at 7 this morning and hasn't left. What's the plan? Simple. Reconnaissance. We'll set up across the street. When he exits for lunch, which he does every day at 1, you'll identify him from a safe distance. If it's confirmed him, we proceed. Proceed how? His jaw tightened. That's not your concern. It is if you're asking me to be complicit in murder. I'm asking you to identify a man who killed my brother and would kill, to you without hesitation, if he knew you existed. Alessandro's voice was hard. After that, you're done. Free. Whatever I do next has nothing to do with you. Except it does. Because I'll know. I'll know I helped you find him. Helped you kill him? Yes, you will. He looked at me fully, his dark eyes intense. But you'll also know that 17 other people won't die. That he can't hurt anyone else. That justice, even imperfect justice, was served. I had no answer to that. Because he was right, wasn't he? Kozlov was a killer. A professional. Someone who would continue destroying lives until someone stopped him. But did that make what we were doing right? The surveillance position was a coffee shop across from Kozlov's building. We settled at a window table, laptops open like we were just remote workers. The security team scattered to strategic positions, rooftops, alleys. A van parked half a block away with communications equipment. Alessandro ordered us coffee. I couldn't drink, my stomach too tight with anxiety. At 12:45, he touched my hand. He's moving. 2nd floor, heading to the elevator. My heart hammered. How do you know? Our person inside. He nodded to the building entrance. Get ready. The minutes crawled. People came and went from the building, business people, delivery drivers, a woman with a stroller. Normal life continuing while I prepared to identify a killer. Then the door opened, and he stepped out. Viktor Kozlov looked exactly as I remembered, and nothing like I expected. The face was right, sharp features, gray threading, dark hair, that scar through his left eyebrow. But he looked ordinary. Like someone's uncle or a successful accountant. He wore an expensive suit and carried a briefcase. He checked his phone, smiling at something on the screen. He looked human. That's him, I whispered, my voice barely audible. That's Viktor Kozlov. Alessandro nodded once, speaking into a nearly invisible earpiece. Confirmed. Move to Phase 2. What's Phase 2? But even as I asked, I saw it happening. A man, one of Alessandro's security team, approached Kozlov on the sidewalk, showing him something on a phone. Kozlov stopped, interested. They spoke briefly. Then Kozlov nodded, following the man toward the alley beside the building. No. The word escaped before I could stop it. Alex, no, not like this. Not in an alley like he killed Marco? Alessandro's voice was ice. Yes, exactly like that. Poetic justice. It's murder, It's retribution. He stood, pulling me up with him. Come on. We're leaving. I can't. You need to do nothing except get in the car. His grip on my arm was firm but not painful. You identified him. Your part is done. The rest is mine. He practically dragged me outside, Marcus already pulling the SUV to the curb. I looked back at the alley, at Kozlov disappearing into darkness with Alessandro's man, and felt something break inside me. I'd done this. Enabled. This. I was complicit in whatever happened next. The drive back to the estate was silent. Alessandro made calls in rapid Italian, his voice cold and businesslike. I stared out the window, seeing nothing, feeling numb. It was over. Kozlov would die today, shot in an alley by men who worked for Alessandro Salvatore. Justice would be served. The scales would be balanced. And I would go back to my life, knowing I'd helped orchestrate a murder. When we arrived at the estate, I went straight to my room, ignoring Alessandro's call to wait. I needed space, needed air, needed to process what I'd just done. I was packing my few possessions when my door opened without knocking. I didn't say come in, I said without turning. It's my house. Alessandro closed the door behind him. What are you doing? Leaving. You said I'd be free after the identification. I identified him. So, I'm free. Mia, don't. I spun to face him. Tears I'd been holding back finally spilling over. Don't tell me it was necessary. Don't tell me he deserved it. Don't tell me I should feel good about what we just did. I won't. Because you shouldn't. He moved closer, his expression softer than I'd ever seen it. You should feel conflicted, guilty, human. Those feelings mean you're nothing like Kozlov. Nothing like the people who exist only to destroy. But I helped you. I helped you kill someone. You helped me stop a killer. There's a difference. Is there? I sank onto the bed, my hands shaking. Where does it end, Alex? When does the revenge stop? When does the violence end? I don't know. He knelt in front of me, taking my trembling hands in his steady ones. I wish I could promise you it ends today. That after this, there's only peace. But my world doesn't work that way. There will always be another Kozlov, another threat, another battle. Then I can't be part of it. I can't live like this. I know. His voice was barely a whisper. Which is why I'm letting you go. The words should have brought relief. Instead, they felt like a knife twisting in my chest. Just like that, after everything? Not just like that, because this is the hardest thing I've done in years. He brought my hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that felt like goodbye. But I won't trap you in my world, Mia. I won't make you complicit in violence you can't stomach. I won't turn you into something you're not. What if I don't want to leave? The words escaped before I could stop them. What if I want to stay? Alessandro's dark eyes searched mine. Why? So you can watch me become what you fear? So you can lie awake wondering if I'm killing someone? So you can paint beauty while I traffic in death? So I can paint beauty while you do what's necessary to keep people safe, I corrected. So I can be the light while you navigate the darkness. So I can... My voice broke. So I can be with you. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. I pulled my hands from his, cupping his face instead. Nana was right. I'm falling for you. Maybe I already fell. And yes, it terrifies me. Yes, I wish you were anything other than what you are. But you're not. And I'm choosing you anyway. Mia, I kissed him. Stopped his protest with my lips on his, my hands in his hair. My body pressed against him with all the desperation and desire I'd been suppressing for weeks. He froze for a heartbeat, then kissed me back with an intensity that stole my breath. His arms came around me, pulling me closer, one hand tangling in my hair while the other pressed against the small of my back. The kiss was hungry, desperate, filled with everything we hadn't said and couldn't say. It tasted like coffee and danger and something that might have been love. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Alessandro pressed his forehead to mine. This is a mistake, he whispered. Probably. You'll regret it. Maybe. I'll hurt you. Not intentionally, but my life, my choices, they'll hurt you eventually. I know. I pulled back enough to look into his eyes. But I'd rather be hurt loving you than safe without you. That's my choice, Alex. Mine, not yours. Something in his expression cracked the careful control, the the distance he maintained from everyone. For the first time since I'd met him, Alessandro Salvatore looked vulnerable. "I don't deserve you," he said quietly. "You probably don't. But you're stuck with me anyway." A smile touched his lips, genuine, warm, transforming his face into something almost beautiful. "Nana will be insufferable." She predicted this. She's very wise. She's very nosy. He kissed me again, softer this time. "Sweet. Stay. Not in the guest wing. With me." "Is that an order?" "It's a plea. I thought about my small apartment in the city, my struggling artist's life, the freedom I'd fought so hard to maintain. And I thought about Alessandro, this complicated, dangerous, surprisingly tender man who'd given me his mother's studio and watched me paint like I was creating miracles. "I'll stay," I whispered. "On one condition. Name it. No more secrets. If you're planning something violent, something that will weigh on my conscience, I want to know. I want the choice to be complicit or not. I want honesty." Alessandro hesitated, then nodded. "Honesty, even when it's ugly. Especially when it's ugly. Then I should tell you Kozlov isn't dead." I pulled back, confused. "What?" "He's not dead. He's alive, sedated, and currently being transported to a secure location where he'll stand trial before the families." Alessandro's expression was calm, matter of fact. "Not a legal trial. Our trial, where he'll answer for his crimes, not just Marco's murder, but all 17 killings we can prove." "I don't understand." "The alley was a capture operation, not an execution. I told you retribution, not murder." His hand came up to cut my cheek. "You were right, Mia. Killing him in an executed alley would make me no better than him. So I'm doing it differently. Still justice, still accountability, but not cold-blooded murder." Relief flooded through me, so intense it made me dizzy. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I needed to see your reaction. Needed to know if you could live with believing I'd killed him, if you could stay with me even thinking I was a murderer." His eyes searched mine. "You passed the test. Even thinking I'd done something you found morally reprehensible, you chose me. That tells me everything I need to know. That was manipulative, yes, and cruel, yes. I should be furious with you. You should." His thumb brushed across my cheekbone. "Are you?" I considered it. The test, the manipulation, the emotional whiplash of thinking he'd killed someone only to discover he hadn't. In any normal relationship, it would be unforgivable. But this wasn't a normal relationship. And Alessandro Salvatore wasn't a normal man. "Ask me again in the morning." I said finally. "After I've processed this." "Fair enough." He stood, pulling me up with him. "Come on. I want to show you something." He led me through the house, down to the ground floor and out through French doors I hadn't noticed before. Beyond was a private garden, smaller than the main grounds but somehow more intimate. Stone pathways wound between flower beds already showing signs of autumn. A fountain bubbled quietly in the center, and beyond that, overlooking a small pond, was a structure I'd mistaken for a groundskeeper's shed. Alessandro unlocked it, gesturing for me to enter first. Inside was another studio, smaller than his mother's but somehow more inviting. New supplies lined the shelves, fresh canvases, unopened paint tubes, brushes still in their packaging. Natural light flooded in through skylights. A comfortable chair sat in one corner beside a small wood stove. "For you," Alessandro said from the doorway. "Your space, where you can create without ghosts, without memories of my mother or anyone else. Just you and your art." I turned slowly, taking it all in. "When did you do this?" "I had it built 3 days ago. When I realized you might stay." He moved to stand beside me. "I know I can't give you a normal life, Mia. I can't promise safety or simplicity or any of the things you deserve. But I can give you this, a place to create, a sanctuary inside the fortress." Tears spilled down my cheeks, happy tears this time. "It's perfect. So are you." He pulled me into his arms, and I went willingly, pressing my face against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong beneath my ear. "Stay with me. Not because you're trapped, not because you're scared, but because you choose this. Choose me. Choose us." "I already did," I whispered. "The moment I decided not to run from you in that coffee shop." "No." His arms tightened. "The moment you drew Marco's face, that's when this became inevitable. We just didn't know it yet." He was right. From the moment my charcoal had moved across that paper, capturing a dead man's face from memory, my fate had been sealed. Not by destiny or cosmic forces, but by choice. By the decision to create instead of forget, to face instead of run, to love instead of hide. We stood there in my new studio, wrapped in each other, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. Outside, Alessandro's world continued dangerous, complicated, built on foundations of violence and power. But inside this small space, we had created something different. A sanctuary. A promise. A beginning. The trial lasted 3 days. I didn't attend. Alessandro had been clear about that I'd identified Kozlov, confirmed his identity, but I wouldn't watch whatever passed for justice in his world. Instead, I stayed at the estate, painting in my studio, creating beauty, while Alessandro and his world dealt with darkness. When he returned on the 4th day, he looked exhausted but lighter somehow. The weight he'd been carrying since Marco's death, maybe even since before, had lifted. "It's done," he said, finding me in the garden studio. "Kozlov pled guilty to all charges. He'll spend the rest of his life in a facility where he can't hurt anyone. Not dead? Not dead. Life imprisonment in our version of a supermax. He'll never see daylight again, never touch a weapon, never harm another person." Alessandro pulled me into his arms. "Is that justice enough for you?" I thought about it. About Marco dying in that alley. About 17 other victims. About the man who'd haunted my nightmares for 3 years. "Yes," I said finally. "It's enough. Good." He kissed the top of my head. "Because I have something else to tell you. Something that can't wait." "What?" The Bratva. Victor's organization. They want peace. They're offering to recognize our territories, establish treaties, end the violence. His voice held wonder. 30 years of conflict, potentially ending, because we showed mercy instead of vengeance. "Because you showed mercy," I corrected. "Because you showed me there was another way." His hands came up to cup my face, his dark eyes intense. "You changed me, Mia. Changed how I see solutions. Changed how I lead. Don't give me too much credit. You're still dangerous. Always." A smile touched his lips. "But maybe dangerous with a conscience now. Dangerous with purpose beyond revenge." I kissed him, standing on my toes to reach properly, losing myself in the taste of him, the feel of him, the certainty that I'd made the right choice, even if it was the complicated one. When we broke apart, he reached into his pocket, extracting a small velvet box. My breath caught. "Alex, I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other 6 months. I know you should probably run screaming from this." He opened the box, revealing a ring vintage, beautiful, an emerald surrounded by small diamonds. "But I also know I've never felt about anyone the way I feel. About you. And I know that in my world, tomorrow isn't guaranteed. So I'm asking now." He dropped to one knee, there in my studio, surrounded by half-finished paintings and the smell of turpentine and oils. "Mia Rivera, will you marry me? Will you be the light in my darkness? Will you create beauty while I do what's necessary to keep that beauty safe? Will you be mine, and let me be yours, for however long we have?" I looked down at this complicated, dangerous, surprisingly tender man. This criminal who'd shown me mercy. This killer who'd chosen justice. This human who'd seen me as more than a witness or a tool, but as someone worthy of love. "Yes," I whispered, "but on one condition. Name it. You have to promise that every day you'll try to be the man you pretended to be when we met. Not the killer, not the criminal. Not Don Salvatore. Just Alessandro. Just Alex. The man who gave me a studio and watched me paint like I was creating miracles. That's not pretending, Mia." He slid, the ring onto my finger, a perfect fit. "Of course. That's who I am when I'm with you. The best version of myself. The man I want to be." He stood, pulling me into his arms. And I went willingly, pressing my face against his chest, feeling his heart beat steady and strong. "I love you," I whispered. "Even though you're complicated and dangerous, and sometimes manipulative. I love you. I love you too." His arms tightened. "Even though you're too good for me and probably should have run the first chance you got. I love you anyway." We stood there in my studio, in our sanctuary, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. Outside, Alessandro's world continued, still dangerous, still complicated, still built on foundations most people would never understand. But inside this small space, we had created something extraordinary. A partnership, a promise, a love forged in darkness, but determined to create light. Nonna was right. Love in their world, our world, now was rare, precious. Something to hold on to with both hands and never let go. So I held on, and so did he, and somehow impossibly we made it work. 3 years later, the gallery opening was everything I'd dreamed of and nothing like I'd imagined. My paintings hung on pristine white walls in one of Manhattan's most prestigious galleries. Critics and collectors mingled, champagne glasses in hand, examining my work with serious expressions. The reviews had been spectacular, a fresh voice in contemporary landscape painting. Emotional depth rarely seen, an artist to watch. I should have been terrified. Instead, standing beside Alessandro in a cocktail dress that probably cost more than my first car, I felt only pride. "You did this," I murmured, gesturing to the crowd. "Your connections." I made the introduction to the gallery owner. Alessandro corrected. "You did everything else. The paintings, the vision, the talent. That's all you, amore mio." I leaned into him, feeling his arm come around my waist. 3 years of marriage, and the gesture still felt like coming home. "She's incredible, isn't she?" A familiar voice made us both turn. Nonna approached, elegant in black silk, her white hair perfectly styled, her dark eyes sparkling with pride. "My granddaughter-in-law, the famous artist." "Not famous yet, Nonna." "Soon." She patted my cheek affectionately. "I knew from the moment Alessandro brought you to the estate, you would either destroy each other or create something beautiful together. I'm pleased it was the latter." "We're pleased too," Alessandro said dryly. Nonna laughed, the sound rich and genuine. Then her expression sobered slightly. "There are men here, from other families. They want to meet you both, to pay respects. Tonight?" Alessandro frowned. "This is Mia's night." "It's fine," I interrupted, because it was. This was our life now, beauty and danger intertwined, art openings and family business, creation and the cost of protection. I'd learned to navigate both worlds, to exist in the space between them. Let them come. For the next hour, we greeted representatives from families whose names I'd learned over the years. Men who treated Alessandro with respectful deference and me with curious interest, the artist who'd somehow civilized Don Salvatore, the woman who'd brought color into his gray world. They didn't know the whole story. Didn't know about Viktor Kozlov or Marco's murder, or the night I'd drawn a dead man's face from memory. They only knew what they saw. A successful artist married to a powerful man, existing in harmony in worlds that should have been incompatible. "You're tired?" Alessandro said eventually, reading me with the ease of long practice. "We can leave." "Not yet." I gestured to a painting near the back of the gallery, my favorite piece, the one I'd been most nervous about showing. "I want you to see this one properly." In context, we moved through the crowd to stand before it. The canvas was large, 6 feet by 4, and depicted a scene I'd painted from imagination and memory combined. A Tuscan villa at sunset, olive groves silvering in the last light, mountains rising in the distance. But in the foreground, barely visible unless you looked closely, 2 figures stood in a garden, a man and a woman, their faces turned toward each other, their hands clasped. "It's us," Alessandro said softly. "It's us," I confirmed. "The night you proposed, the moment I decided to choose love over fear, complexity over simplicity, you over safety." He pulled me closer, his lips brushing my temple. "Do you ever regret it? Choosing me?" I considered the question. Considered the last 3 years, the beauty and the danger, the art and the violence, the love and the cost. I thought about the mornings waking in his arms, the nights standing in my studio painting while he worked late in his study, the compromise and communication, the honesty and occasional lies we told each other to preserve sanity. "No," I said finally. "Honestly, I don't regret it. I regret what was necessary to bring us together. I regret the violence and the death. But I don't regret choosing you. I never will." "Good." His arm tightened around my waist. "Because you're stuck with me now, Mrs. Salvatore. No escape." "Mrs. Salvatore," I repeated, still getting used to the name. The artist who married the mob boss. The woman who changed everything. he corrected. Who showed me there was more to life than revenge and violence. Who created beauty in a world built on darkness. I turned in his arms, looking up at his face, still beautiful, still dangerous, but softer now, changed by time and love, and the daily choice to be better than his world demanded. We changed each other, I said. That's how partnership works. Is that what we are? Partners? Partners, lovers, friends, conspirators. I smiled. Take your pick. All of the above. He kissed me softly, unconcerned with the gallery full of people watching. Always all of the above. When we finally left the gallery, hours later, my paintings had nearly sold out. Critics were calling me a breakout talent. Collectors were requesting commissions. My career, the one I'd thought I'd lost when I witnessed Marco's murder, was finally beginning. And beside me, his hand warm in mine, was the man who'd made it all possible. Not because he'd bought my success or used his connections to force doors open, but because he'd given me a sanctuary, a studio, a space to create without fear, a home. As we drove back to the estate, our estate now, the place where we'd built our life together, I watched the city lights blur past the windows and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. It wasn't perfect. My life with Alessandro would never be simple or safe or uncomplicated. There would always be threats to navigate, moral compromises to consider, moments where I questioned my choices and his. But there would also be mornings in the studio, paint on my hands and sun streaming through skylights. There would be dinners with Nana, who treated me like the granddaughter she'd always wanted. There would be quiet evenings wrapped in Alessandro's arms, both of us content to simply exist in each other's presence. There would be love, complicated, dangerous, beautiful love. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.